Welcome to the 8th chapter of the Book of Esther. We had in the last chapter that finally Haman came to an end on the Stavros that he built. He was crucified on it and died. And it continues now with Esther and the plight of the Jews as was sent out in these letters throughout the known world of the Persians, which ranged from Ethiopia up into India, large area. And Jews were apparently scattered all over, and they were all in fear of the repercussions of this letter that was sent out by Artaxerxes, by Haman. So it continues then in the story, and it says, and in that Emera day, Vasilev's king Artaxerxes presented to Esther all as much as existed to Aman. Haman the Diavolo. We have the slanderer, the devil as diabolos, Spanish. We have diabolic, also another word, English word that comes from this Greek word. It means a slanderer. Now, there's Satan is a different word. Satan is generally it's a personal name or a title, I suppose you would call it. But not even then always. When we get to it, we'll go over those things about Satan. But basically, he is the slanderer. Diavolo, there's probably way more to this word than slanderer. You could probably go into dictionaries and Greek-English dictionaries or whatever your language is and read more about the possible uses of this word, or you could even go back and find out how this Greek word is used in context in other works, classical works at the time of Christ, and find out exactly what more it means. But I had to choose one word, and that was the one I chose. And it continues, and Mordecai was called on by the Vasileos, the king, for Esther indicated how he was related to her. They were first cousins, even though he was a lot older and raised her. He was the son of the brother of her father. Mentioned that, I think, in the beginning, about the second or third chapter. And the king took the dactylion. It was a ring. We have a dactyl is their fingers. And so the dactylion was a ring which he removed, so it's a finger ring, which he removed from Aman, which he had given to him as a sign of his high stature, and in the Persian Empire. So he took it off apparently before Haman was crucified, and he gave the ring, that is, to Mordecai. So now Mordecai has this ring, which was for the second in command, more or less. Maybe in Susa, maybe other places. It doesn't really say, and I'm not sure on that. But so Mordecai has the ring, and Esther placed Mordecai over all the things of Haman. So all of his goods, his house, and so forth. And proceeding, she spoke to the king and fell upon his feet and petitioned him to remove the evil of Haman, and as much as he did to the Jews. So even though it was going good for Esther, she was getting the things that she asked for. The one thing that needed to be done was the salvation of her people, the Jews. And the king stretched out to Esther the gold rod. So apparently she came in again unannounced, as she did at the first time that she appeared to the king, as far as being unannounced. And then if the king doesn't stretch out his golden rod, then that person would be killed right there. But here again, she does the same thing, puts her life up for the Jewish people. He could have very well have decided, well, I've had enough of this woman and all these things about the Jews, and he could have not stretched out his golden rod, and she would have been killed, and the right writing that went out throughout the world would still exist, and the Jews would face the plight of these executions. But he did stretch out the rod, so he was open to hear what Esther said. And Esther arose to stand beside the king as a queen. And Esther said, so she's standing next to him, and he's sitting on the throne, and she's reaching and she's saying, if it seems good to you and I have found favor, let it be sent forth to return the letters being sent from Haman, having been written to destroy the Jews who are in your kingdom. So she wants them to bring back the letter. But that wasn't possible, because once they're sent out, they're sent out. And so what happens? For how shall I be able to behold the ill treatment of my people if the thing still happens with the death of all these Jews? And how shall I be able to be delivered in the destruction of my patrithos, a fatherland? The paternal comes from that word. So basically she sees that as a Jew she could be killed because of the edict that was sent out by Haman, signed over by Artaxerxes. So she brings that in front of the king. There's a lot more to this than what it seems. And the king said to Esther, well, if all the possessions of Haman I gave and granted to you, and he I hanged upon the xilu, the tree or the timber, for the hands he bore against the Jews, what yet do you anxiously seek? I did everything for you. What more do you seek? And he's just looking probably at the personal, which probably a lot of rulers do. If I've done something for one person, then they don't look any further than their own actions are just a simple solution to a complex problem. But he goes on, he says, well, and you will write from out of my name as it seems good to you. So he's doing the same thing that Haman, that he's giving her the same power that he gave Haman when Haman came in and wanted to, made a charge against the Jews that they were doing all these evil things and didn't do what you said. And so God gave Haman the same privilege as he's giving Esther now. So you have my name, do what seems good to you, and set a seal with my ring. And the seal is I have it right here. I use a seal on the bags, the Bible bags. If you ordered a Bible from us at apostolicbible.com, then you would receive receive it in a Bible bag. And here's one here. I don't know how well that shows. This is a brown bag, and down here is this wax seal. And here is the wax seal that I got to get it right side up here. This is the wax seal that I use to stamp into this hot wax. Now, basically, mine is on a handle here. It comes off, but his would be just this metal part that would made onto a ring. Then now, whether he wore it or not, or he just used it for the sealing, I don't know. But that's what it is. So once you seal it, well, I don't actually seal this shut, but if I had put it across the seam right here, then in an envelope with something confidential written inside, then when the person that received it saw it, it would be there and it would not be broken or anything. But if anybody had opened it up, then that seal would have been broken, and the person receiving it would know someone had looked inside of that envelope. But so this is what this is all about. So it continues, for as much as is written of the king in giving an order, and the seal should be set by my ring, it is not to them to contradict. So he could also put the seal on a document that was written at the very bottom. He signs it and it's sealed with his ring. So it doesn't have to be necessarily in an envelope, but this is what these signets were used for. So once the signet was put on, then it is law, basically. And the scribes, the grammatis, grammar comes from that, were called in the first month protomini. Proto, a proton, first major, and mean, we have the word for, I'm trying to think of, well, mean menstrual cycle had to do with the month, in other words with the mean, which is Nisan. On the treaty, the tri is 3, and here it's treaty and third, the 3rd and the 20th day of the same year. And it was written to the Eutheis, the Jews, as much as was given charge to the economies, the local managers. And economy comes from that word. It's almost a transliteration, economy, from the economies, and these were people that were in charge of an economy, more or less. Economy could be something way more than money. It could be affairs and so forth. The affairs of state. And to the rulers of the satrapon. Now I have that in green because it's only in the Old Testament, and you can now add that to your English derivatives book, and it's a transliteration into a satrapes. A satrap was a political rule, a place like a state or a province of a country, and a satrap from India, Indikis, unto Ethiopias, Ethiopia, 127 satrapes. So in this kingdom of Persia, which sounds like it was very well regulated and ruled with laws and rulers set in place, I've read about it, and it's really was one of the most powerful empire in the world at that time, until Alexander the Great came and defeated it. But actually, the Greeks were defeated earlier by the Persians, and they even went into Ethiopia and India, and so it was the Persian Empire was very, very powerful. It had everything all together. It sounds like laws and architecture, writing, all sorts of things. And so anyway, according to place by place, this went out, this letter, new letter, according to their lexeme, a form of speech, a language, basically. We have a lexicographer, somebody that studies speech, or a lexicon, a book, has to do with speech. Now, that's not in the New Testament, so again, with the green, you can add that to your English derivatives book, and lexicon, lexicographer, you can put those in there for that. And it continues, and it was written through the king, or by the king, through the king, and set seal with his ring. So there, the new thing was sent out. And they sent out the grammata, gramophone was a early instrument that they did recordings on these round discs and played them. A gramophone but here a gramma is somebody that writes, and letters. It sent out the letters by bibliophoron, couriers. Biblio is a book. Phoron is carry, book carriers. As he gave orders to them to deal with their laws in every city. So the satraps can deal with this problem in their way that they can, is giving the state rights, both to help them and to deal with their opponents. And them, I believe, here would be the Jews, both to help the Jews overcome this problem with the edict to be able to kill them, and to deal with their opponents and with their adversaries as they wanted. So he's now giving the Jews in the area a power to deal with this earlier edict, and basically to defend themselves or even attack possibly their opponents. When on one day in all the Basilia, the kingdom of Artaxerxes, on the 13th day of the Dodecato Duo, and Do is an abbreviation of Duo 2, and Deca 10, so it's 10 and 2 is 12, Minos, again, month, which is Adar. And the Antigrapha, this is a word you can add to English Derivatives Book 2. Anti is something that's against or in place of, and a grapha is a writing, so it's a copy, and that's what it means, an antigrapha. Let them be displayed clear to the eyes in all the kingdom, and for all the Jews to be prepared for this day, for them to wage war against their opponents. So unfortunately, the Jews are going to have to go and defend themselves, and maybe even be on the offensive in some places, because the first edict could not be taken away, and people that did want to do them damage could. But this is the way it happened. It's interesting how once the law went out, it was not reversible. Now, I don't know as far as in the United States, a law can be changed by, I believe, the Congress, where Congress makes the law, so they can change it anytime they want. But apparently, in this political entity, it couldn't be done. Then the epis, a horseman, a horse is an epos. We have hippo from that. Hippopotamus, a river horse. Potamus is a river, and we have the Potomac River in Washington, D.C., and it means river, so it's really river. And the epos and the potamos is a river horse. And the horseman is the epis, went forth hastening to complete the things by the king, being spoken by the king. So they're hurrying to get it out before this day when the people could start attacking the Jews. And the order was displayed also in Susis, Sushan or Susa in Persia, which is now just dirt, leveled to the ground. And Mordecai went forth robed in the Vasilikine. There's again the royal. We have the basil from the king, queen, all these different words that have to do with vassal. Royal stoline, an apparel, but it's really more stoline. We have the English word a stole. Most people today wouldn't know what a stole was. I'm going to be in my 77th year in a few days, and my mother wore a stole. It's kind of a covering over her long robe type of a thing. And so a royal stole. You could see these in the Romans and the certain people. They had these purple robes type things that they didn't necessarily maybe the arms could stick out, and it's more of a thing, and open in front, but closed in the back, could go all the way down to the feet. So this is what now Mordecai's robe with, the royal apparel, and having a golden Stephanon, a crown. We have the word Stephen from that, it means a crown. So he had a gold crown on his head, of course, and Crisoon, and also a diadema, and that is transliterated into diadem of purple fine linen. So the diadem that we see in the Bible takes on different forms, but apparently this one was some type of a purple, fine purple piece of cloth that went around the head, I'm assuming, and then on top sat this golden crown, so it wouldn't fall off or whatever, however they did it. And the ones in Sushan, Susa, beholding, they rejoiced. And to the Iudes, the Jews, there became light and gladness. Phos, we have phosphorus, comes from that, light and gladness. So they were all happy in Susa. Things have changed. Haman's gone. Now Mordecai. And they really respected Mordecai and liked him because we'll see here why. In each city and place, a polling, a metropolis, a city and place of whichever the public notice was displayed, there was joy and gladness among the Jews, with toasting in gladness. They're happy and toasting, having a little bit of wine and celebrating. And many of the ones of the nations were circumcised, and that means the nations means that they were what we call today Gentiles, which is basically an English word that was made up for nations. In the New Testament, there's no Gentile. That's just a made-up word by the King James people, who I don't know why they chose that word. I looked it up in the Oxford English Dictionary, and apparently it wasn't used too much except for the Bible. But it basically is ethnon, the nations. And so nations are basically, when it talks about, that's more a figure of speech, of course, for the people of the nations. The nation itself was not circumcised, but many of the ones of the nations were circumcised, as the Jews were, of course, and were Jewish-like. Iudaizon is the Greek word, Iudaizon, Jewish-like, because of the fear of the Jews. So here, the Jews are, instead of going to be persecuted, killed, eliminated, are now the power that is feared in many places of the nations. How God can change things around in one moment of time. It all happened less than 24 hours, where Haman planned to talk to the king the next morning and set up the Stavros, and then next morning went in and instead ended up walking Mordecai around the town and lifting him up. And then the next day, Haman was found out by the king and executed. That fast of a time. God laughs at the plans of man, the plans of the nations. These plans of this nations were circumscribed. Is that the right word? Circumscribed. They were went around by God and came up with his plan, which was to save the Jews who were set for extinction. And so many times the Jews have been set for extinction, but so many times that God has stepped in and stopped that from happening and has lifted them up. But the good things of the Jews here are wonderful, but yet again, we go into the New Testament and we see their rebellion against Jesus Christ. I have to bring that up, and it mentions in Revelation 3:9, "Behold, I give from out of the synagogue of Satan of the ones saying themselves to be Jews and are not, but lie. Behold, I will make them that they shall come and do obeisance before the feet of you." And I think this is the Church of Philadelphia. "And they should know that I love you." So what goes around comes around. So here the Jews are been delivered, but we have the return to Jerusalem, but then the Romans come, and after the crucifixion of Jesus, it's very interesting how we had the crucifixion of Haman, and then we have the crucifixion of Jesus, which turns it all around again, and they're gone for 2,000. The Jews are gone for 2,000 years, but yet God brings them back, and they're in a country now in 1948, but they have not accepted Jesus, and that's God will deal with that in his way. The next chapter, the Jews destroy their adversaries. So we'll find out in chapter 9 what repercussions these Jews do and the attack against them and what happens. I hope you'll join us in the next video seminar of chapter 9, and until then, God bless.